Alright guys, our central question for today is how do we describe the intervals of increasing and decreasing of a function? Intervals of increasing and decreasing of a function. Alright, so whenever we talk about intervals of increasing to decreasing, what we want to remember, guys, is that we read a graph from left to right. So just remember that. When you read a graph about intervals of increasing and decreasing, you read it from left to right. So from left to right, from left to right. Read it from left to right. Now, we're going to look at also maximums and minimums and intervals of increasing and decreasing. So here's our function right here. Notice that there is a maximum of negative 1/6 and a minimum of 1/2. So maximum, I'm going to say it's negative 1/6. But I want you to put down these words, absolute versus local. Guys, the word absolute means that it's the only one. But if you look at your graph, my graph keeps going down on the left and up on the right. So if it keeps on going up, will it ever reach an absolute maximum? The answer to that is no. So the point negative 1/6 is not an absolute maximum, it's a local maximum. Also, 1/2. I agree. 1/2 is a minimum. But again, write down the words absolute versus local. Notice that this graph keeps going down. So if it keeps on going down, it will never reach an absolute minimum. So this is what we call a local minimum. One way to remember this, guys, is that if your end behavior is going in opposite directions, you will never have an absolute maximum or minimum. Alright, so here's what we need. Whenever we read our graph, read it from left to right, we identify the max and the mins, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at only the x value. So just the -1 and just the +1. Now, let's read it from left to right. What's the graph doing to start off with? Well, from left to right, the graph is increasing, then the graph is decreasing, then the graph is increasing. Now, whenever we write our intervals, you are always going to start with negative infinity, and you're going to always end with positive infinity. Because remember, if you're reading it from left to right, if you go to the left, that's negative infinity. If you go to the right, that's positive infinity. So you should always start with negative infinity and always end up with positive infinity. You're probably wondering, well, where am I going to fill in these blanks with? Well, that's why we looked at the x values. Look at the first x value. It was -1. Someone put -1 in this blank. Whatever this number is goes in this next blank. So put a -1 there, and then put in the next blank, so 1. And so whatever number goes here, goes right here. So in other words, the graph is increasing from negative infinity to -1. So on that interval, so from negative infinity to -1, it's increasing. From -1 to 1, it's decreasing. And then from 1 to infinity, it's increasing again. So again, it's increasing from negative infinity to -1, and from 1 to infinity. It's decreasing from -1 to 1. Alright, let's take a look at one more page. Okay, let's look at these bottom two since the graphs are already here. Notice the graphs number 3 and number 4. Let's look at number 3. Let's read what's going on. Maximum. I do notice that the point 0.9 is a maximum, but notice that the graph keeps on going up, so this will not be an absolute maximum, it will be a local maximum. My minimum, I have two of them. I have -2.2, -16, and I have +2.2, -16. Notice that the graph doesn't go any lower than these points, so this is what we call our absolute minimum. Alright, so now, read the graph from left to right. What's the graph doing first? Well, it's decreasing, then it's increasing, then it's decreasing, then it's increasing again. Remember, always start with negative infinity, and then always end with positive infinity. Alright, now let's go in order. Look at only the x values. Go in order. So I'm going to go in order. So my first blank is going to be -2.2, and then transpose that right there. The next blank will be 0. Copy it right there. The next blank will be 2.2. Copy it right there. And those are my intervals. So it's increasing from -2.2 to 0 and from 2.2 to infinity. It's decreasing from -infinity to -2.2 and from 0 to 2.2. Alright, last one. Let's take a look at this graph. Notice the end behavior they're going in opposite directions. So that means I'm not going to have an absolute max nor an absolute min. So both of them are going to be local. My local max is 1.8, comma 9.1. My local min is negative 0.2, 0.8. Read the graph from left to right. The graph is decreasing, then it's increasing, then it's decreasing again. Always start with a negative infinity. Always end with positive infinity. Go in order. Use the x values. So this first blank will be negative 0.2. Copy it. The next blank will be 1.8. Copy it. And so it's increasing from negative 0.2 to 1.8. And then it's decreasing from negative infinity to negative 0.2 and from 1.8 to infinity. All right, that's it for today's lesson.